today we're going to make a little video of how you can use our embroidery kit here, created by Circle and designed by us, which we're very proud of. And we want to share how to do all of the stitches. We made a little stitch sampler that has some of the main embroidery stitches that you will use. So we're going to learn how to make all of these stitches. This is the final product that you would get from your embroidery kit. And you can make a pillow out of this. You can keep it in your hoop and hang it on the wall. You can sew it onto the back of a jacket. There are many things you can do with it. But most importantly, you're going to learn all of the main embroidery stitches. So this is what you'll find in the box. We have a little booklet that has everything you need, step by step, about how to make some of these main embroidery stitches. And this is the pattern, and here's a second pattern, just in case. And in the box you will find an embroidery hoop, 7 inches. You'll find this very cool marker that washes off in water. You can even just spray it with water and it'll vanish, which is very cool. And it has some different embroidery threads. Each box has a little bit different color scheme, so you can just sort of play. We don't say which colors you should put where, so that's really up to you. And a piece of fabric you can use, a needle, and we like to pack our boxes with some raw wool, and if you want to use that, you can spin it into thread, or you can do needle felting or wet felting. So wet felting, just really easy, take soap and water, warm water, and put this into some soapy water, and then roll it with dish soap, and this will become a solid little ball. And if you make a whole bunch of those and put a string through it, you'll have something beautiful to hang in your window. What you're going to do is you need to transfer this pattern onto this fabric. You can put it on the window and tape this on here, and then you can put your fabric over it, get it centered, and then tape that on there. And you can really see through. If you can't see everything, just refer to the pattern on the back of the book. So once it's all taped up, you would use this pen and just trace what you see. If it's a little bit thicker, make that line a little bit thicker. See the dots? Do the dots. Just do it all, everything you see. So most embroidery thread comes with 6 threads put together, 6 pieces. And so you can break that up, or you can leave it at 6. You can even double it up if you had a thicker needle. But if you want a thinner line, you can break it into 1 or 2 or 3 threads. So generally I use 3. And there's different ways to do it. I like to use my mouth. So when you thread a needle, you don't really bring the thread to the needle. You bring the needle to the thread. It's a little bit easier. And push it out, and it comes right through the eye. You put a knot in only one side, one piece of the thread, one half of the thread. One knot in there. That's a trick. My Grammy taught me this. I grab the piece of thread, I wrap it around my finger, and then I roll it, and grab my middle finger and pull it back. That'll take some practice, but you can get a knot in there any way you want. Take your fabric and put it over your smaller hoop. You take the larger one and put it over the top of that and press it down. Once it's on there, you can start tightening it. And then you're going to pull your fabric nice and taut. You're going to get it nice and centered too. So at this point, your piece will look like this. The pattern will be on the fabric, and you will have a threaded needle with one side loose and free to pull up and down, and one side with a knot. You're going to decide where you want to start, and I'm going to start right here. So you mostly are just feeling, you can kind of see where your needle is by pressing and say, and you might poke in the wrong spot, and you just get to where you want to be. When you're there, put put it all the way through. Pull it through, and the knot will stop you. And the reason you only use one side knotted is so you can go longer and shorter, and if you make a mistake, you can just pull the needle off. So I now look at my pattern, I know I'm right here, and so this is a running stitch. So I know that I need to make a running stitch here. And I didn't have to trace all the details on the window, because as long as I can refer to this, I'll just transfer that here. So I have the basic line, and I know I'm going to do a running stitch. And if I were here, I'd be doing a satin stitch. I might be doing a woven wheel. I might be doing a lazy daisy. So it just depends on where you are on the pattern. Just follow this. So I'm going to show you each of the stitches on their own so that it's easier to see. We're going to start right here with the back stitch. To do the back stitch, you would start at the beginning of the line, but I already started it. This is what it looks like. So on a back stitch, as you see here, one is a little bit forward, and then you go back to 2, and then you go forward to 3, back to 4. This is the order. So you start just ahead of where you want to be. So I'm going to go 1 stitch forward, and then you go back. 1, go through, ahead 1, back to where you were at the end of that one, pull through. So this makes a really clean straight line. This is great for, and I don't like that. If I don't like it, I would just fix it. This is great for any outlines, for words, for writing. It makes a very clean line. And you just keep going until you're done. And go back. And that is the back stitch. When you're finished with any line, you turn the hoop over. I've got a lot going on here because I'm showing you the process. And you can either just kind of weave into the work a few times, or you can knot off in the back. You can clip it and make a little knot. So I can show you a couple ways. Clip. Sometimes I just make a little knot with what's left here. Or you can just keep weaving it through. Next, we're going to do the running stitch. This is the running stitch. So you would start wherever you start. I started here, but I'm going to show you from here. Come up, wherever the beginning is or wherever you left off, and you just go back down. You skip a little space and come back up. Now what I'm showing you right now is the stab method. You can also do the sew method, where you would go down and just feel and then come back up. And go down and come back up, which is much quicker, but not as precise. And that's the way. The next is the stem stitch. And so you're going a little bit past where you need to go. And you're coming up halfway, but just below. So where the last one ended, which is here, and just below it. And this is great for flower stems or a thicker line. Go ahead and back to where the last one ended, but just below it. Head and just below. If you don't get it right the first time, just keep moving it around until you have it just where you want it. Next, we're going to do the satin stitch. It's called the satin stitch because it's threads really close next to each other, and it kind of has a satiny feel. So you decide where you want to start. And for this, if you want to give yourself 2 lines to work with, you can do that so you know where the top is and the bottom, or just do it by eye. So come up from the back, and go down wherever the weight is. And then you come really close. So it's really right next to the first one. And then back down right next to the other. And optimally, they're just touching. And you want to keep it as straight as possible, and it will give the best effect. You just keep going with that until the area is really filled in, and this is great for filling in areas. So you see here how both ends of the thread are now in there. You want to avoid that, and so it just happened so I can pull out one end and now move the thread up, because I always want to just be working with one half. So at any time if I make a mistake, I can just pull the needle off and continue. We're going to make a chain stitch now. You just come up where you want to start, you make a little loop around, and you go back through exactly where you came out or just next to it. But you don't pull it all the way through. You get it about that far, and now you decide how far along you want your chain to be. So I'm going to say it's that big. And now the needle is going to stop that from going all the way through. And it makes a little hoop. And so for the next one, I do the same. I make another little loop, and I go back through the same hole. And then poke around where you're going to go. The needle's going to stop it. As you continue, it will make a little chain like you see here. We're now on the herringbone stitch, which is really pretty, one of my favorites. And just pretend I were starting here. It's the same. You go in, go through, go up to where you want to be. And this is another one of those where if you want to be exact, you can make 2 lines. Give yourself a little guideline. And then you come up right here close next to it. This looks like little teepees. And then down here. Next to that one. Just poke around so it feels right. And sometimes I just angle, make sure I check my angle with the thread, and then I can hold it in place and then use that as my guide. And that's the herringbone. This is called the fishbone, and you generally have a guideline that's straight in the middle. And come up at the very tip. This is the very tip of your leaf or your fish spine. And then you come back, you just go down a little bit. And then the next one comes up just a little bit below and to the right. You kind of feel around so you get to just where you want to be. And then you go either to the center or a little bit to the left. So you're just kind of going to the opposite side. So a little to the left or the center. And now you go up to the other side of it. If you were on the right, you go to the left, poke around, and then you can go back to the center line or just a little bit to the right. And it will make a nice little spine. Now we'll go back to the other side again. Each time you switch sides and go back down to the center or just past the center. Just don't forget where your center line is. And you keep going until you are finished. And toward the end, as you can see here, it starts to go out a little bit, and you shorten them until you have the shape you want. So this is a favorite stitch. It's so cute. It makes these little knots on top of the fabric. And it's also very tricky, and it's going to take some practice, so be gentle and patient with yourself. For the French knot, you're gonna grab your thread, hold it taut, a few inches up, and now you wrap that a few times around the needle. And then you put it back into the same hole or just right next to it. You see I'm holding the knots or the wrap with my pointer, and I put it in right around the same spot. And at this point, once it's in, now I keep this tight and I push it down so it's really right against the fabric. Now I hold the back, and it's helpful to have this thread right over the edge. And while this presses down, and this might be a little tricky to push through, you can twist, you pull through the back, and once you pull through, you'll have a cute little knot. And you might have to try this 100 times till it works. But keep trying, because once you get it, you're going to fall in love. Now we are going to do the lazy daisy stitch or the daisy stitch. And really it's an extension of the chain stitch that we saw, but it's just done in a flower pattern. So you come up in the center and you decide on how much space you need for all your petals, where your center is going to be. So you come up in the center, do exactly what you did for your chain. You make a little hoop in where you would actually want your petal to be. It's like a big petal. You go back down through that hole, and then you can either press it through like this, or you can feel it go all the way through and then feel around. So that's what we were talking about with either the sewing method or the stab method. And now it's going to grab that little hoop. And sometimes the threads will come a little undone like you see here, and then you just kind of fix them up, or sometimes you can just retwist them if you're not happy with it. And then you go back to pin it into that spot here, like you see. There's just a little stitch that holds it in place. So back down through. And you're just going to keep going around again from the center. Make the petal wear like a big petal, and here I want a little more room. Back to the center, back to the center, up. And keep going until you have a flower pattern. And the last one we're going to do is called the woven wheel. It makes this little flower pattern, which is quite beautiful. And you just come up in the center of where the flower will be. And you need to make a 5-pointed star. You could do any amount of odd numbers. 5 works great. And so it's basically making 5 spokes. And the last one. Once you have your spokes, you come up somewhere in the center area, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So somewhere near the center. And it's called woven wheel because you're weaving. And so the whole time you're going over, under, over, under, over, under, all the way around. I'm going to start with my first one, and you decide if you want to go clockwise or counterclockwise. So I'm going to go counterclockwise. I'm going to go over this one, under this one. And if your needle is really pointy, sometimes I use the back of my needle. And I just keep turning it so I see that I went over that one. I'm going to go under the next, over that one, under the next. Sometimes I can go 2 without pulling it through. And I just keep turning the fabric. I went under, over, under, over, under, and I keep going, and I don't pull too hard, but I do pull it so it makes a little, kind of like a little bud center. And I keep looking back. Did I go over, under? Oh, let's see. I went under. I go over, under, over, under. And if you have any problem with your point of the needle getting stuck, you can actually weave with the back of your needle. So I was under, over, under, over, under, pull through. You just keep going all the way around until you have a little rosebud like this. So I will just show you how to end one more time. We'll pretend this is a finished rose. And you go through the back. Got a little bit of a mess back here because I'm showing all these stitches. You can either make a little knot and pull that knot all the way down to the bottom by holding it with your finger. And that actually would do it. That little knot will hold it in as long as it's close down by the fabric. You can cut that off, give yourself like a 1/2 inch. Or you can kind of weave into the other pieces nearby, but I like to make a knot. So when you're done with your whole sampler, just take your time. Just make it something you do when you have downtime, you're in the car, and don't feel rushed. Just make it something you do to relax. When it's all finished, it will look something like this with the colors that you have. And you can also add your own colors you might have at home, or buy your own colors if you don't like the ones we included. And here it all is. So you can just keep this in the hoop. You can tuck the back in and maybe kind of push it all through. And you can sew a simple stitch all around to keep it in this way. You can even tape it down, whatever you need to do. If you want to just put it up on the wall, you can do that. You could also take it out of the hoop and then sew it into a little pillow, or make it a patch for your favorite pants or shirt or jean jacket and put it on there. Sky's the limit. Basically, you were just able to learn all of these knots, and now you can make your own designs and embellish your clothes in any way you like.